GamingBolt presents 14 video game bosses with excessive QTEs. We've seen bosses require quite the complex array of mechanics to bring down. However, some of them aren't quite as complex, employing a healthy dosage of quick-time events to emphasize the cinematic nature of moments. What happens when those QTEs become a little too excessive? Well, let's take a look at 14 boss battles where this is the case. Hoyt, Far Cry 3. After Voss, one would think a showdown with the bigger bad of Far Cry 3 would be more bombastic. Alas, the final battle with Hoyt is a knife fight. We aren't generally opposed to knife fights, but this one has you doing little more than pushing a button at the right time. If you're lucky, you can actually skull and crossbones Hoyt, shoving a knife through his throat and forehead at the same time. Jonathan Irons, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. Even with all of the hate of the futuristic premise received, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare had a generally neat campaign. Heck, even the part where you and Gideon don Goliaths to storm Big Bag Jonathan Irons' stronghold was fun, if slightly overblown. But when going after Irons after dumping your exosuit, it's just a matter of slide here or melee this. And the bad guy really isn't going to kill Mitchell after everything that's happened? Seriously? The Black Hand / Sauron, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. When a boss battle starts with a self-throat slitting and the Dark Lord showing up, you know things have gone crazy. Case in point, Talion's battle with a Sauron-possessed Black Hand. Despite being non-canon, this is still a pretty big deal for Shadow of Mordor, but what does developer Monolith have? QuickTime events. The entire fight isn't even that long, and we don't know whether to feel good or bad that Sauron is dispatched so quickly. Skorge, Gears of War 2. Skorge was one of the more badass villains in the Gears of War franchise. A chainsaw staff could only get him so far though, especially when the actual fight revolved around breaking it apart. But hey, don't worry, the next stage of the battle was a turret sequence on rails, which ended with Skorge unceremoniously dying from a fall. WESKER, Resident Evil 5. Split up into 3 phases, the initial battle with Wesker is clever-ish, even if you're basically dimming the lights for some rocket delivery. It's the battle in the volcano that's, well, something. You see, Chris and Shiva are split up. How does Chris get to Shiva? Well, it involves moving a boulder with Chris's punches, fueled with the power of QTE. That'd be ridiculous enough, except it actually works. Things only get more far-fetched from there. Deathstroke, Batman Arkham Origins. There was a fair bit of hype around the battle with Deathstroke. Aside from being one of the first major villains confirmed for Batman Arkham Origins, he's one of the few that can actually give the Dark Knight a tough fight. Said epic fight is presented as little more than a counterfest with the occasional beatdown and quick draw Batclaw. It may have looked somewhat cool, but overall, Slade deserved better. Origami Killer, Heavy Rain. Forget how plot hole filled the reveal of Shelby as the Origami Killer is. The entire fight with him, regardless of who's doing the fighting, is one QTE after another. This is more due to the nature of Heavy Rain itself though, but we're loath to really call it bad since the bigger problem was the game's story. But even by today's standards, it can come across as overdone. Nimroth, Warhammer 40k Space Marine. Warhammer 40k Space Marine's Nimroth is quite the conjurer, throwing wave after wave of enemies in the final battle. It ultimately comes down to leaping off of a friggin' building and battling in freefall. On one hand, there are too many QTEs, the same two repeating ad nauseum for a bit. On the other hand, you're punching the big villain while freefalling. Double standards, I know. Regardless, the QTEs are pretty heavy-handed in the actual slugfest. Didact, Halo 4. An epic encounter with the newest big bad where Master Chief bests him in a battle of wits? Hardly. The final fight with the Didact in Halo 4 boils down to press the left analog stick to climb, press left trigger to plant a grenade, watch Didact die. Really, that's it. It's one thing to have a QTE or two in a single boss fight, but having 2 QTEs as the entire fight? Huh. Wraith, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End isn't generally a game you look back on for its boss fights. Epic encounters, sure. Boss fights, nah. That being said, as much as QuickTime events can be lame, the fight with Wraith isn't too bad. There's an immediate sense of danger in dodging his attacks, and it actually becomes a proper fight at some point. General Sarrano, Bulletstorm. After hours of listening to General Sarrano, the one responsible for tons of unethical killing, you finally get to fight him. Sort of. The fight with Sarrano involves a few quick-time events, like mashing a button to resist dying. The actual means by which Sarrano is disposed is kind of cool, leashing a canister and exploding it on him before kicking his body through a piece of metal. But we wanted more, and we never got more thanks to the lack of a sequel. Ursula, Kingdom Hearts 2. Remember Ursula in Kingdom Hearts 1? How much of a pain she was to fight? Wouldn't it be awesome if she was brought back as a DDR-esque QTE battle in Kingdom Hearts 2? No, we're not kidding. The feared Ursula was actually part of a bigger musical number that was the trip to the Little Mermaid's Atlantis. We're not quite sure why even now. Fire Hydra, Ninja Blade. The king of excessive QTEs has to go to Ninja Blade. Seriously, every single battle is like borderline Guitar Hero in the number of QTEs you need to hit. The battle with Fire Hydra best exemplifies this, as even the most basic actions, dodging, hanging onto something, etc., are separate QTEs. It's a good thing Ninja Gaiden never took any hints from this. Oh, wait. Omari Nishitani, Yakuza 0. Depending on how effective you are at delivering the beatdown in prison, you could be seeing the same QuickTime event several times. We're not complaining too much. After all, when they're as visceral as kicking a Tonto into Nishitani's leg, they can be pretty awesome. Still, it gets pretty monotonous doling out the same beating to the man again and again. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.